The orc woman arrived at dusk, walking into Rowan Whitmore's forge with the kind of directness that made him set down his hammer mid-swing. She was tall but not towering, perhaps 5 feet 9 or 10, with the lean build of someone who moved often and carried little excess. Her skin was the deep green of summer leaves in shadow, and her tusks were small enough to barely disturb the shape of her mouth. She wore traveling leathers that had seen hard use, and her dark hair was bound back in a single thick braid. Her eyes, amber and steady, found his across the dimming workspace. "You are the blacksmith," she said. Not a question. Rowan nodded slowly, wiping soot from his hands onto his apron. He was a man of 32 years, broad in the shoulders from his trade, with brown hair that never quite stayed out of his eyes and a face people called honest. He had lived in this border village his entire life, and in all those years, he had never seen an orc walk through his door. "I am Rowan Whitmore," he said. "What can I make for you?" "Nothing of metal." She stepped fully inside, and the forge light caught the angular planes of her face. "I need something else, something harder to shape." He waited. The coals hissed softly behind him. "My name is Rasha Halfborn," she said. "Of the Redfern clan beyond the eastern ridge. In 3 months I am to marry a human man, a lord's second son, as part of an alliance between our peoples. I do not know him. I have never met him." Rowan felt something twist in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. "Congratulations." "I do not want congratulations. I want knowledge." She moved closer, and he could see the tension in her jaw, the way her hands were deliberately still at her sides. "I need someone to teach me how humans love, how they court, how they show affection. All the customs I do not know. If I fail at this, the alliance fails. My clan is counting on me to bridge 2 peoples, and I am walking into it blind." The words hung between them. Outside, the village was settling into evening routines, doors closing, fires being lit. Rowan's forge seemed suddenly very small and very quiet. "You want me to teach you," he said slowly. "You are known as a good man, quiet but fair. You were married once." Her eyes did not flinch from his. "You know what I need to learn." His hands tightened on the apron. "I was married. It ended 5 years ago. She left. Then you know what not to do as well." Rasha's voice softened slightly. "Will you help me?" Every sensible part of him wanted to say no. This was a path that led nowhere good. But he looked at her standing there, asking for help with the same straightforward courage it must have taken to walk into a human village alone, and he found himself nodding. "I will help you," he said. "When do you want to start?" She glanced toward the doorway, where night was gathering. "Is tonight too soon?" That was how Rowan found himself closing the forge early, banking the coals and hanging his apron, while Rasha waited with the patience of someone used to long watches. He lit 2 lanterns and set them on the workbench, casting warm circles of light across the packed earth floor. "The first thing," he said, feeling absurdly formal, "is that human courtship often begins with small gestures. Gifts, conversations, dances." "Dances," she repeated. "We have dances. War dances, victory dances, funeral rites. Courtship dances are different. They are about showing you can move together, that you can be gentle and attentive." He hesitated. "I could show you if you would like." Rasha looked around the forge at the anvil and the tool racks and the cold metal waiting to be worked. "Here." "Why not here?" He moved to clear a space, pushing aside a half-finished gate. "Courtship happens wherever 2 people decide it does." He could see her considering this, turning it over. Then she nodded and stepped into the cleared space. Rowan's heart was beating harder than it should. He had not danced in years. The last time had been at his own wedding, moving through the forms with a woman who had looked everywhere but at him. He pushed the memory down. "Give me your hand," he said. She extended her right hand, and he took it carefully. Her palm was warm and calloused, the grip strong. He placed his other hand lightly at her waist, feeling her stiffen slightly at the contact. This is a basic position. The man usually leads, but it is more of a conversation than a command. You move together, listening to each other's weight and balance. There is no music, she pointed out. Then we make our own rhythm. He began to hum, low and tuneless, an old melody his mother had sung. Then he stepped, slow and simple, guiding her through the basic pattern. Left, right, forward, turn. She stumbled at first, unused to the closeness, the coordination. But she was quick, and within a few repetitions she had the pattern. They moved around the forge floor, between pools of lantern light and shadow, and something strange happened. The awkwardness did not fade entirely, but it transformed into something else. A shared focus, an awareness of breath and movement and the small adjustments needed to stay in step. When he finally stopped, they were both slightly breathless. "That is how humans dance?" Rasha asked. "One way. There are hundreds of others." He released her hand, though he could still feel the phantom warmth of it. "But they all have the same purpose, to share space, to show trust." She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought he saw something shift in her expression. "In my clan, trust is shown through fighting together, guarding each other's backs. This is different. Yes. I am not certain which is harder." That startled a laugh from him, brief and genuine. Her mouth quirked, and he realized with some surprise that she had meant it as humor. "Come back tomorrow evening," he said. "If you can, we will continue." She nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Rowan Whitmore." "Just Rowan, Rowan." She tested the name, and then she was gone, slipping into the darkness outside. He stood alone in his forge for a long time after, listening to the tick of cooling metal and wondering what he had agreed to. The next evening she returned, and the evening after that, it became a pattern. She would arrive as the sun touched the western hills, and he would set aside whatever he was working on. They moved from dancing to other lessons. How to sit at a formal dinner, the meaning of different flowers, the proper way to greet relatives of increasing rank. How to read the subtle signals humans sent with posture and expression. Rowan had not expected to enjoy it, but he did. Rasha was an excellent student, focused and thoughtful, asking questions that cut to the heart of each custom. And she taught him in return, sometimes without meaning to. The way orcs valued directness over poetry. How they saw strength not just in body but in the willingness to adapt. The songs they sang on long winter nights. 2 weeks into their lessons, he found himself talking more than he had in years. Telling her about the village, the people, the small dramas that made up daily life. She listened with that same steady attention she brought to everything, and occasionally she would tell him something of her own life. The Redfern clan's territory in the Highlands, her role as a scout and diplomat. The weight of being chosen to represent her people. "Do you want this marriage?" he asked one evening. They were sitting on the workbench, taking a break. He had been showing her how to write a formal letter, and his fingers were cramped from demonstrating penmanship. Rasha looked down at her own attempt, the letters angular and uncertain. "One is not the question I was raised to ask. The clan needs this alliance. Human settlements are expanding. We can fight or we can negotiate. I was chosen because I am good at seeing both sides, at finding common ground." "That is not an answer." "No." She set down the pen. "I do not want it, but I will do it well because that is what is needed." He recognized that tone. It was the same one he had used when people asked about his own marriage, back when it was still struggling along. Duty could carry a person a long way, but it was a cold companion. "Tell me about your wife," Rasha said, surprising him. "The one who left." Rowan was quiet for long enough that he thought she might take back the question, but she waited, and eventually he spoke. Her name was Alina. Our marriage was arranged by our families, combining his smithing business with her father's trade connections. We were both young. We both thought we could make it work. He stared at the far wall, at the shadows dancing there. She was kind. I was respectful, and we were both absolutely miserable. Why? Because kindness and respect are not enough. We tried for 3 years. We ate meals together and shared a bed and never once managed to share anything that mattered. She wanted to travel, to see the world beyond this village. I wanted to stay, to build something here. Neither of us was wrong, but we were wrong together. So she left. And I was relieved, which might have been the worst part. I was relieved to stop pretending. He looked at Rasha then, meeting her eyes. That is what I learned from marriage. That arrangement and love are like oil and water. You can force them into the same vessel, but they will never truly mix. She was quiet, absorbing this. Then she said, "Is that why you are helping me? To make sure I do not make the same mistake, maybe. Or maybe I am just a fool who cannot leave well enough alone." He slid down from the workbench. "Come on, let me show you how to dance a waltz. It is more complex than what we started with." They moved into the cleared space, and he took her hand again. The contact had become familiar now, but it still sent a small jolt through him each time. He had been telling himself it was just the novelty of touching another person after years of solitude, but he was beginning to suspect that was a lie. The waltz required closer contact, and as they moved through the steps, he was acutely aware of how well they had learned to move together. How she anticipated his shifts in balance, how he knew when she was about to turn. It should not have been possible to build this kind of synchronization in 2 weeks, but somehow they had. "This is beautiful," she said quietly, and he realized she was not talking about the dance itself, but about the feeling of it, the wordless communication. "Yes," he agreed, and his voice came out rougher than intended. They practiced until the lanterns burned low, and when she finally left, he found himself already counting the hours until she returned. The lessons continued. A month passed, then 5 weeks. Rowan taught Rasha how to read the subtle politics of a formal gathering, how to make small talk that said nothing and everything, how to give gifts that carried layered meanings. She soaked it all in, her natural intelligence making her a faster student than he could have hoped for. But something else was growing between them, slower and harder to name. It was in the way she started arriving earlier, helping him finish his work so they would have more time together. The way he found himself preparing small things for her, a cup of tea waiting, a stool positioned where she liked to sit. They talked about everything now, long, rambling conversations that stretched late into the night. He learned that she loved thunderstorms and hated enclosed spaces. That she had 3 younger siblings who looked up to her, and the weight of that responsibility sometimes kept her awake at night. That she sang when she thought no one could hear, wordless melodies that reminded him of wind through grass. She learned that he had wanted to be a scholar when he was young, but the forge had needed him. That he still read whenever he could, collecting books the way some men collected weapons. That his marriage had not just ended when a leaner left, it had poisoned something in him, made him believe he was not capable of the kind of love songs were written about. "That is foolish," Rasha said bluntly when he admitted this. They were working on polite disagreement, how to argue without offense, but she had abandoned the lesson halfway through. "You are one of the kindest people I have met. The fault was in the match, not in you. You cannot know that. I can. I have been watching you for weeks now, Rowan. The way you are patient with students who are slow to learn. The way you speak of this village, every person in it, with respect and care. The way you have helped me without asking for anything in return." Her eyes were fierce. "If your wife could not see your worth, that is her failing." Something cracked in his chest, some old defensive wall. You are supposed to be learning tact. I know tact. I choose honesty. She stood, crossing to where he sat. You have been teaching me human ways, but here is an orc truth. We do not waste time on pretty lies. If someone matters to us, we tell them. The air felt too thin. Rowan could hear his own heartbeat, loud in the quiet forge. Rasha, he started, but he did not know how to finish. She crouched down so they were at eye level. I know what is happening here. I think you know it too. But you will not say it because you think it is hopeless, because I am promised to another. You are promised to another, he said, and the words tasted like ash. Yes. She did not look away. And I will honor that promise because my clan needs this alliance. But I want you to know that if circumstances were different, if I had walked into this forge as a free woman with no obligations, I would be asking you to court me in truth, not as a lesson, as a choice. He could not breathe, could not think past the sudden, fierce want that surged through him. Rasha, you do not have to say anything, I just needed you to know. She stood, putting distance between them again. Should we continue the lesson? But Rowan shook his head. No, not tonight, I need to think. She nodded, understanding, and left without another word. He sat alone in the dark forge for hours, staring at nothing. What she had offered him was impossible. She was promised to another man, to an alliance that affected the future of two peoples. His own feelings, her feelings, they did not matter in the face of that. Wanting something did not make it possible. But for the first time in 5 years, he wanted something with a fierceness that terrified him. 2 days passed before Rasha returned. Rowan had spent them in a fog of work, hammering out tensions on iron that could not fight back. When she appeared in the doorway, he felt his whole body go still. I apologize if I made things difficult, she said. I can find another teacher if you prefer. No. The word came out sharper than he meant. No, I want to keep teaching you, want. The word hung between them, heavy with doubled meaning. She stepped inside and he saw the careful control in her posture. She was guarding herself now, keeping her distance. It hurt more than he expected. What is next in the lessons? She asked. Rowan had planned to teach her about letter writing between married couples, the affectionate phrases and private languages that developed. But he could not do that now, could not sit next to her and explain endearments while his heart was trying to claw out of his chest. Tell me about the man you are to marry, he said instead. What do you know of him? Rasha blinked, clearly not expecting the question. His name is Lord Cedric Ashton, second son of House Ashton. They hold lands 3 days' ride south. I know he is 27, that he studied law and governance, that he volunteered to be part of this alliance when his father proposed it. She recited it like a list of facts learned by rote. I have seen his portrait. He looks kind. And he has agreed to this. To marrying an orc woman he has never met, as I have agreed to marry a human man I have never met. We are both doing our duty. Rowan turned away, feeding more coal to the forge, though it did not need it. Does he know you are here, learning from me? No. The details of my preparation were left to me. Will you tell him? Silence. Then, quietly, I do not know, should I? It was a genuine question, and he forced himself to think past his own tangled feelings. Honesty is usually best in a marriage. But some things are private, parts of ourselves we keep separate. You will have to decide which this is. What would you want, if you were him? Rowan laughed, bitter and short. If I were him, I would be the luckiest man alive, and I would spend every day proving to you that I understood that. She sucked in a breath. When he turned back, her eyes were too bright. This is not fair, she said. I came here to learn human customs, not to feel like I am being torn in half. I know. He wanted to cross to her, to take her hand, to close the distance that hurt like a physical wound. But he stayed where he was. I am sorry. I should not have said that. Do you mean it? Every word. Rasha closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a new resolution there. Teach me something difficult tonight, something that will take all my focus. I cannot think about this anymore, Rowan. I cannot keep circling it. So he taught her formal table etiquette, the bewildering array of forks and glasses and plates that noble dinners required. It was finicky, absurd work, and it did what she asked. They focused on the material, on the precise placement of silverware and the correct way to hold a wine glass. They did not talk about anything that mattered, but when she left, he saw her hand tremble on the door frame, just for a moment. The lessons grew harder after that, and not because of the material. Every meeting was an exercise in restraint. Rowan would demonstrate how to take a lady's arm for a promenade, and the touch of her hand in the crook of his elbow would burn. Rasha would practice polite conversation, and he would hear the real words underneath, the things she was not saying. They were both walking a knife's edge, and every day it grew sharper. 6 weeks became 7, 8. The wedding drew closer, a fixed point on the horizon they could not avoid. Rowan found himself growing angry in a way he had not been in years. Angry at the situation, at the unfairness of finding something real only to watch it be given away. He tried to bury it, to focus on the work, but it leaked out in small ways. Hammer strokes that landed too hard. Short words with customers. Sleepless nights spent staring at his ceiling and imagining a different world. Rasha noticed. Of course she noticed. She noticed everything about him now. "You are hurting yourself," she said one evening. They were supposed to be practicing formal introductions, but she had stopped mid-lesson. "I can see it. I am fine. You are lying, to me and to yourself." She set down the imaginary gloves she had been pretending to remove. "We should stop this, the lessons. It is causing more harm than good." "No." The word came out fierce. "You still need to learn. The wedding is only 3 weeks away. I know enough. I can manage the rest on my own." "Rasha, please." He did not care that he was begging. "Do not take this from me too." Her face crumpled just for a second before she controlled it. "This is torture, for both of us. I know. But it is the only torture I have where I get to see you every day. And when you marry him and go to live on his family's lands, I will never see you again. So please, let me have these last few weeks." She looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded, wordless. They kept meeting. They kept pretending the lessons mattered. And underneath it all, the unspoken truth grew heavier with each passing day. 9 weeks. 10. Rowan was hammering out a horseshoe when old Marcus from the tavern came to lean against the forge door. Marcus was 70 if he was a day, with a face like worn leather and eyes that missed nothing. "You are doing something stupid," Marcus said without preamble. "Good morning to you too. That orc girl, the one you have been teaching, you are in love with her." Rowan's hammer slipped, clanging off the anvil at the wrong angle. He set it down carefully. "Marcus, do not Marcus me. I have lived too long to dance around the point. The whole village has seen it. The way you look at her when she walks through the market. The way she looks back when she thinks no one is watching." The old man shook his head. "And she is still going through with this marriage. It is not her choice. It is an alliance." "Everything is a choice, boy. Harder for some than others, but still a choice." Marcus scratched his jaw. "You going to do anything about it? What can I do? Tell her to break a treaty that would benefit both our peoples. Ask her to choose me over her duty to her entire clan." Rowan picked up a rag, wiping soot from his hands with more force than necessary. "I have no right to ask that. Maybe not. But you have a right to tell her how you feel. Give her all the information before she makes a choice that cannot be unmade. She knows." "Does she? Have you said the words plain and clear? Or are you both still dancing around it, thinking that makes it hurt less?" Marcus pushed off from the door frame. "Think about it. Because in 2 weeks, she will be married, and you will spend the rest of your life wondering if speaking up might have changed something." The old man left, and Rowan stood alone in the forge, surrounded by half-finished work and the smell of coal smoke. That night, Rasha arrived for their lesson, and Rowan had made a decision. "No more pretending," he said before she could fully enter. "No more practicing customs you already know. If you want to spend these last days together, then let us spend them honestly." She stopped, hand still on the doorframe. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I love you, completely, helplessly, in a way I did not think I was capable of anymore. And I know it is unfair to tell you this now, when you have obligations you cannot break. But I cannot keep pretending I am just your teacher, that this is just about customs and etiquette. You matter to me, Rasha, more than I can find words for." She was staring at him, and he could not read her expression. Fear and hope warred in his chest. "You love me," she repeated. "Yes. And you think this changes nothing because I am still promised to Lord Cedric. I think it changes everything and nothing. I think you deserve to know the truth before you walk into that marriage, and I think I deserve to say it at least once, even if it is the only time." Rasha closed the door behind her, shutting out the evening light. When she turned back, her face was set in hard lines. "Do you know what you have done?" Her voice shook. "I was managing. I was holding myself together, preparing to do what needed to be done, and now you have made it impossible. I am sorry." "No, you are not. Do not lie to me now, not after demanding honesty." She crossed the space between them in 3 strides. "You are not sorry, and neither am I, and that is the problem." She kissed him. It was fierce and clumsy and perfect, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms coming up to wrap around her waist. She tasted like the peppermint tea she always drank before coming to the forge, and her tusks pressed gently against his lips, an intimacy he had imagined 100 times but never believed he would feel. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you too," she said. "I have loved you for weeks, maybe from the first night when you taught me to dance and treated me like I was something precious. And it is killing me, Rowan, because I cannot have you. We have 2 weeks. That is not enough, I know, but it is what we have." He pulled back enough to see her face. "I am not asking you to break your promise. I know what that would cost. But if we only have 2 weeks, then let me love you properly for those 2 weeks. No more lessons. No more pretending, just us." She searched his face, and he could see her wrestling with it. Duty against desire. Obligation against the fierce, selfish want of something for herself. 2 weeks, she finally said. "And then I go to him and we never speak of this again." 2 weeks, he agreed, though the words felt like a death sentence. Those 2 weeks were the best and worst of Rowan's life. Rasha came to the forge every evening, but they did not practice customs anymore. Instead, they talked. Really talked, the way people did when they knew time was running out. She told him about her childhood in the highlands, learning to track deer through snow and read weather in the clouds. About her mother, who had been clan chief before her death and had taught Rasha that leadership meant carrying what others could not. About her fears that she was not strong enough for what was ahead. He told her about the years after Elinor left, the loneliness that had settled into his bones like cold. About the books he read late at night, imagining other lives he might have lived. About his parents, long dead, and how his father had taught him that good work was its own reward, even when no one was watching. They also did simpler things. Rowan taught her to cook his favorite stew, and they ate together sitting on the workbench, shoulders touching. She taught him an orc song about the stars, and he fumbled through the unfamiliar words until she was laughing too hard to correct him. They took walks through the village at dusk, ignoring the stares and whispers, because in 2 weeks none of it would matter anyway. And they touched. Carefully, reverently, learning the landscape of each other. He learned that she was ticklish just below her ribs. She learned that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a childhood accident with a horse. They kissed until they were both shaking, and then they stopped, because some lines could not be crossed without making the inevitable separation unbearable. "Tell me about him," Rowan said one night. They were lying on a blanket outside the forge, looking up at the stars. "About Lord Cedric. What he is like, if you know." Rasha was quiet for a long moment. "I received a letter from him last week, introducing himself properly since we had not corresponded before. And he seems kind, thoughtful. He wrote about his hope that we could build a partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals. He did not speak of love, but he did not speak of duty either. Somewhere in between. That sounds better than many arranged marriages start with." "Yes." Her hand found his in the darkness, lacing their fingers together. "And it makes me feel like a terrible person because all I could think while reading it was that he was not you." Rowan's chest ached. "You are not terrible. You are human. Or, well, orc, but you know what I mean." She laughed, watery and sad. "I wish I had met you first, before all of this was arranged, or I wish I had never met you at all so I could go into this marriage without knowing what I am missing." "Which do you wish more, the first, always the first?" She turned on her side to face him. "Even if it ends like this, I am glad I know you, glad I learned what this feels like." He kissed her then, soft and slow, trying to pour everything he felt into the contact. When they broke apart, her eyes were wet. "1 week left," she whispered. "I know." They did not talk about what would happen after. There was no point. Rasha would leave, marry Lord Cedric, and begin her new life as a bridge between their peoples. Rowan would stay here in this village, making horseshoes and gate hinges, and trying not to remember the feel of her hand in his. But on the last night before she had to leave for the Ashton lands, something broke. They were in the forge, ostensibly so Rowan could give her a gift he had made. It was a small thing, a hair clasp wrought in the shape of oak leaves, delicate work that had taken him a week to perfect. When he handed it to her, she held it like it was made of glass. "It is beautiful," she said. "I wanted you to have something to remember, as if I could forget." She set the clasp down carefully on the workbench. "Rowan, I need to tell you something. And I need you to not interrupt until I am finished." Dread coiled in his stomach, but he nodded. "I have been thinking," she said, "about this alliance, about what it really means. It was arranged by our leaders, yes, but not voted on by the clan. Not discussed with anyone beyond the elders and chief. I represent my people, but I have never asked if this is truly what they want, what I want. Rasha, you promise not to interrupt." She paced the length of the forge, her movements sharp with agitation. "The purpose of this marriage is to build peace, to create bonds between humans and orcs. But what kind of peace is built on misery? What kind of alliance starts with two people forced together against their will?" Lord Cedric agreed to this. "To duty. Not to me. And I agreed to duty, not to him. But there is another way, a different alliance." She stopped pacing, turning to face him fully. "What if I went back to my clan and argued for a different match, one based on genuine connection? One that would be a true bridge between our peoples because it was built on real love." His heart stopped. "You mean, I mean you, I mean us." Her voice was fierce now, determined. "You are respected in this village, you have skill and reputation. If we married, it would still be a human-orc alliance, it would still serve the same purpose, but it would be real." Hope and terror crashed through him in equal measure. They would never agree. Your clan needs the Ashton lands, the trade routes, the military support. Perhaps, or perhaps I can convince them that a genuine alliance is worth more than land treaties. That trust built on love is stronger than trust built on contracts. She crossed to him, taking his hands. I am not naive, Rowan. I know this is difficult. I know I am asking you to upend your life, to become part of something larger and more complicated than a quiet village forge. And I know there is a real chance my clan will refuse, that Lord Cedric's family will be offended, that this all falls apart. But I have to try. He could barely breathe. You would do that. Risk everything. I would risk everything for the chance to build something real with you. To not spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Her eyes were bright and clear. But I need to know if you want the same, if you are willing to stand with me while I fight for this. Because it will be a fight, Rowan, against expectation and politics and people who think they know better. And I cannot do it alone. Rowan thought about his quiet life, his predictable days, the safe, small existence he had built after Alina left, where nothing could hurt him because nothing mattered enough. And then he thought about Rasha, fierce and determined, asking him to step into uncertainty for the chance at something extraordinary. Yes, he said. Whatever you need, however you need it. Yes. She kissed him, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. They planned through the night. Rasha would return to the Redfern clan and request an emergency council. She would argue her case, presenting Rowan as an alternative alliance candidate. If the clan agreed, she would send word immediately. If they refused, she would honor her original commitment and marry Lord Cedric, and they would never see each other again. What if they agree but the Ashtons do not? Rowan asked. You will have broken the engagement. That could mean conflict. Then I will negotiate, offer reparations. Find another way to build the alliance they need. She was packing her few belongings, moving with quick efficiency. My clan trusts my judgment in diplomacy. That is why they chose me for this in the first place. I will use that trust. And if they strip you of your position for this... She paused, looking at him steadily. Then I will have lost my role but gained something more important. You cannot have everything, Rowan. Sometimes you have to choose what matters most. He helped her prepare for the journey, packing food and checking her travel gear. It was nearly dawn when she was finally ready to leave. They stood together in the doorway of the forge, and the eastern sky was just beginning to pale. How long? He asked. The journey to clan lands is 2 days. The council will need to convene, which could take another day or 2 depending on who is available. Then I have to make my case, and they will need time to deliberate. She calculated quickly. A week, maybe 10 days. If you have not heard from me in 2 weeks, assume they refused and I have gone to honor the original arrangement. 2 weeks. He could survive 2 weeks of uncertainty if it meant a chance at forever. I will wait, he said, however long it takes. She kissed him one last time, fierce and desperate and full of promise. Then she was gone, striding out into the pre-dawn darkness, and Rowan was alone. The waiting was agony. Rowan threw himself into work, taking every commission he could find. He reshod every horse in the village. He repaired gates and hinges and farm tools. He stayed in the forge until exhaustion forced him to sleep, and then he woke before dawn to start again. Anything to keep his mind from counting the days, the hours, the endless possibilities of success or failure. Marcus came by on the 3rd day, took one look at him and said, "She is either going to come back or she is not. Destroying yourself will not change it. I know. Do you? Because you look like a man trying to outrun his own shadow." The old man settled onto a stool uninvited. "Tell me what happened." So Rowan told him. About Rasha's plan, the gamble she was taking, the agonizing wait for word. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when the story was finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That is either the bravest or stupidest thing I have heard in decades," he finally said. "Maybe both. I am aware. But it is also the most honest." Marcus stood, bones creaking. Too many people live their whole lives doing what is expected instead of what is right, or what is real. At least you two are trying. Trying might not be enough, no, but it is still worth doing. The old man left and Rowan went back to work. 1 week became 8 days. 9. 10. On the 11th day, a rider came. Rowan was in the forge when he heard the commotion, people calling out that a messenger had arrived. His heart seized in his chest, and he dropped the hammer he was holding, not caring when it clanged against the floor. He ran outside, pushing through the small crowd that had gathered. The rider was Orc, a young male with the same green skin and steady eyes as Rasha. He was dusty from hard travel, and he swung down from his horse with the ease of someone who had been riding for days. "I seek Rowan Whitmore," he announced. "I am Rowan Whitmore." The messenger pulled a sealed letter from his saddlebag and held it out. From Rasha Halfborn of the Redfern clan. Rowan's hands shook as he took it. The seal was unbroken, heavy wax pressed with a mark he did not recognize. He broke it open, unfolding the paper, and Rasha's handwriting swam before his eyes. The letter was short. "Rowan, the council has agreed. It was not easy and the arguments lasted 2 days, but in the end they accepted my reasoning. A true alliance, built on demonstrated respect and genuine connection, serves our people better than a strategic arrangement built on speculation." Lord Cedric's family was harder to convince. They were understandably offended, and there were threats of political repercussions. But I negotiated a trade agreement that gives them what they truly wanted from this alliance: access to our hunting grounds and safe passage through our territory. They have accepted this as reparation. There is still much to arrange, but the core agreement stands. If you are still willing, the Redfern clan formally offers alliance with you through marriage to me. The wedding would take place in 1 month's time, blending both our traditions, on neutral ground where both peoples can attend. I am coming back to you. I will arrive in 3 days. Wait for me. Yours, Rasha. Rowan read it 3 times before the words fully penetrated. Then he looked up at the messenger, who was watching him with undisguised curiosity. "Tell her yes," Rowan said, and his voice cracked on the word. "Tell her I will be waiting, and tell her—" He stopped, overwhelmed. "Tell her I love her," the messenger grinned, showing tusks larger than Rasha's. "She knows, but I will tell her anyway." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Word spread through the village with the speed of wildfire, and the reactions were mixed. Some people were thrilled, caught up in the romance of it. Others were suspicious, worried about what an Orc alliance would mean for the village. A few were openly hostile, muttering about betrayal and unnatural matches. Rowan ignored them all. He cleaned the forge until it gleamed. He closed up shop temporarily and used the time to make himself presentable, getting a haircut and mending his best clothes. He bought food and drink for a celebration, unsure of how many would attend but determined to be ready. And he waited. She arrived on the afternoon of the 3rd day, riding at the head of a small delegation. There were 5 Orcs total, all armed but carrying peace knots on their weapons to show non-hostile intent. Rasha rode in front, and when she saw him waiting outside the forge, her face split into a smile so brilliant it hurt to look at. She dismounted before her horse had fully stopped and crossed the distance between them at a run. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, and she laughed against his neck. "You waited," she said. "I will always wait for you." They held each other while her delegation tactfully looked elsewhere, and the village watched with a mixture of emotions Rowan did not care about. All that mattered was the solid reality of her in his arms, the proof that it had worked. When they finally pulled apart, Rasha introduced her companions. Her younger brother, 2 clan representatives, and an elder who would officiate the marriage ceremony. They were polite but watchful, clearly assessing Rowan and the village with strategic eyes. "We have much to discuss," the elder said. Her name was Grandmother Flint, and she carried herself with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This alliance must be formalized properly. Terms agreed upon. Expectations set," so they talked. Not just Rowan and Rasha, but the whole delegation and the village elders who represented the human side. They negotiated for 2 full days, working out the details of what this alliance would mean. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. It was exhausting and tedious, and Rowan had never been good at politics, but he sat through all of it because this was the price of building something that would last. Finally, the terms were set. The wedding would take place in 1 month, giving both sides time to prepare. It would be held in a meadow halfway between the village and the Redfern clan's territory, a symbolic middle ground. Both human and orc traditions would be honored in the ceremony. And after the marriage, Rowan and Rasha would split their time between both communities, serving as living representatives of the alliance. It was more than Rowan had imagined. It was bigger, more complicated, more demanding. But when he looked at Rasha, saw the fierce joy in her eyes, he knew it was worth every challenge ahead. The month of preparation was chaos. Rowan had to arrange for someone to manage the forge in his absence when he traveled to orc lands. He had to learn basic orc customs and language, stumbling through lessons with Rasha's brother, who found his attempts at pronunciation endlessly amusing. He had to sit through fittings for wedding clothes that blended human and orc styles, resulting in something that looked strange but oddly beautiful. Rasha was equally busy on her end, though they managed to steal time together whenever possible. She told him about the arguments she had weathered in the clan council, the resistance from traditionalists who thought any alliance with humans was betrayal. But she had won them over with logic and passion, arguing that their peoples were stronger together than apart. "I quoted you," she admitted one evening. They were walking through the village, enjoying the cool autumn air. "When you said that arrangement and love were like oil and water, I told them that was true, but that we had found a way to make an emulsion. Something new that used both elements to create strength. That is clever. I am occasionally clever." She bumped her shoulder against his. "Are you nervous about the wedding?" Terrified, but also more certain than I have ever been about anything. He caught her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Are you the same? I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to object or for the whole agreement to fall apart. It seems too good to be real." "It is real. We made it real." She squeezed his hand and they walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then she said, "I have been thinking about what comes after, where we will live, how we will manage splitting time between 2 communities. And I think it will be hard. We will always be between 2 worlds, never fully belonging to either. There will be people on both sides who resent us, who think we have betrayed our own kind." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "But I also think we can build something new, a true bridge, not just in name but in practice. If we are willing to work for it, I am willing." He cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the fact that he could do this now freely. "Whatever it takes, Rasha, I am with you." She kissed him, and this time there was no sorrow in it, only promise. The wedding day arrived with unseasonably warm weather, as if the world itself was blessing the union. The meadow had been transformed. Orcs had erected traditional standing stones in a circle, each one carved with symbols of protection and prosperity. Humans had woven flower garlands and set up benches for the elderly. The result was a strange but beautiful hybrid, much like the marriage it would witness. Guests arrived from both communities. The entire village had turned out, even those who had been skeptical. They mingled awkwardly with the orc clan members, two peoples trying to find common ground through food and forced conversation. It was not perfect, but it was a start. Rowan stood at the center of the stone circle, wearing a tunic of deep blue that had been embroidered by orc craftswomen with human wildflowers. His heart was pounding, and he could not stop scanning the crowd for Rasha, even though he knew she would not appear until the ceremony began. Marcus appeared at his elbow, looking oddly formal in clean clothes. "You ready, boy?" "No, yes, I do not know." "That is normal," the old man chuckled. "You love her more than anything. Then the rest will sort itself out." Music began, a blending of human pipes and orc drums that should not have worked, but somehow did. The crowd quieted, turning toward the northern edge of the meadow. Rasha appeared, and Rowan forgot how to breathe. She wore a dress that was neither human nor orc, but something entirely new. The base was orc leather and fur, practical and strong, but it had been dyed a deep forest green and embroidered with silver thread in patterns that spoke of human craftsmanship. Her dark hair was unbound, falling past her shoulders, and woven through it were small white flowers. The hair clasp he had made, the oak leaves, held back one side. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She walked toward him, flanked by her younger brother on one side and grandmother Flint on the other. When she reached the center of the circle, they stepped back, and she stood facing Rowan with nothing between them. Grandmother Flint spoke first, her voice carrying across the meadow. "We gather to witness a new joining, not just of two people, but of two peoples. This woman and this man come to us freely, having chosen each other despite difficulty and opposition. Their union will serve as a bridge between humans and orcs, a living symbol of what we can build together." Then the village priest, Father Thomas, added his piece. "Marriage is a covenant, a promise to stand together through hardship and joy, to build a life based on trust and mutual respect. What we witness today is the beginning of that covenant, blessed by both our traditions." The ceremony proceeded with a careful balance of both cultures. Rasha and Rowan exchanged vows in both languages, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar words but getting them right. They drank from a shared cup, symbolizing unified purpose. They clasped hands over a flame, representing the warmth they would bring each other. And finally, they exchanged rings, simple bands of silver that Rowan had forged himself. When the priest pronounced them married, the cheer that went up was not quite unified, but it was genuine. Orcs and humans both celebrating, finding common cause in joy. Rowan kissed his wife, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. When they broke apart, she was grinning. "We did it," she said. "We did." The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. There was food from both cultures, music that blended traditions, dancing that required teaching and patience, and a lot of laughter. Rowan danced with Rasha until his feet hurt, and then he danced more, because she was laughing and radiant in his. At some point, he found himself standing with Grandmother Flint, watching the two communities mingle with varying degrees of success. "This will not be easy," the elder said. "The alliance is fragile. There will be setbacks, people who resist change." "I know. But you have given us a foundation, something real to build on." She looked at him with shrewd eyes. "Do not waste it, human. My granddaughter has risked much for you. I know that too, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never regrets it." Grandmother Flint nodded, apparently satisfied, and walked away to harangue someone else. Later, as the moon rose and the celebration began to wind down, Rowan and Rasha slipped away from the crowd. They walked to the edge of the meadow, where the forest began, and sat together on a fallen log. "Are you happy?" he asked. Rasha leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. I am exhausted and overwhelmed and slightly terrified of what comes next, but yes, I am happy. Good. He kissed the top of her head. Because I am completely committed now, you are stuck with me. I can think of worse fates. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the celebration. Then Rasha said, I have been thinking about the future, about children. Rowan's heart skipped. Children, eventually. Not immediately, we have too much to establish first. But someday, she straightened, looking at him. Would you want that, half-orc, half-human children who belong to both worlds and neither? I would want that more than anything. If you do, I do, she smiled. I think they would be beautiful and strong, and probably a handful. Definitely a handful. She laughed, and the sound was full of such uncomplicated joy that Rowan felt his chest expand with it. This was what he had been missing his whole life. Not just love, but the right love. The kind that made everything else fall into place. They stayed at the meadow that night, in a tent that had been set up for them. It was their first night as husband and wife, and it was both awkward and wonderful, full of nervous laughter and gentle discovery. They had time now. Years and years to learn each other, to build something that would last. In the morning, they woke to find the meadow mostly cleared, both communities having returned to their own lands. But there was a note waiting for them, written in Grandmother Flint's sharp handwriting. Come to clan lands in 3 days. We will begin teaching you what you need to know, and bring your human patience. You will need it. Rowan and Rasha looked at each other and laughed. The months that followed were difficult in ways they had not anticipated. Living between two worlds meant constant travel, constant negotiation, constant work to maintain the fragile peace they had helped create. There were people on both sides who resented the alliance, who saw them as traitors or fools. There were misunderstandings that required patient mediation, cultural differences that sometimes seemed insurmountable. But there were victories, too. A trade route established that benefited both communities. A group of young orcs who came to learn blacksmithing from Rowan, bringing new techniques back to their clan. A human family who asked for help when their harvest failed, and received it from orc neighbors without hesitation. Small things that added up to real change. Rowan and Rasha built a home on the border between territories, a sturdy structure that blended human carpentry with orc stonework. It became a gathering place, neutral ground where both peoples could meet and talk. And slowly, painfully, trust began to grow. 2 years after their wedding, Rasha came to Rowan with news. I am pregnant, she said, and her voice was full of wonder and fear in equal measure. Rowan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We are having a child. Are you ready for this? It is going to make everything more complicated. Everything about our life is complicated. What is one more challenge? He pulled back to see her face. But also, yes, I am ready, terrified but ready. The pregnancy was not easy. Rasha was sick for the first few months, and there were complications that required care from both human and orc healers working together. But she was strong and stubborn and determined. And when their son was born on a clear spring morning, Rowan held him and felt his entire world reorganize around this small, squalling creature. They named him Quinlan, and he had his mother's green skin and his father's brown eyes. He was perfect. He is going to have a difficult life, Rasha said, watching Rowan cradle their son. Neither fully human nor fully orc, always caught between. He is going to have a life full of people who love him, Rowan corrected. And parents who will teach him that being between two worlds means he has the best of both. He will make his own path. Quinlan grew, and he was indeed a handful, curious and energetic, with a laugh that could light up a room. And he became a symbol, proof that the alliance was not just political but personal. Other mixed families began to form, tentatively at first, then with more confidence as they saw Rowan and Rasha making it work. 3 years after Quinlan, they had another son. Owen was quieter than his brother, with Rowan's brown skin and Rasha's pointed ears. He loved books and spent hours listening to stories from both cultures, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. The village and the clan grew closer over the years. It was never perfect. There were still tensions, still people who could not move past old prejudices. But there was also genuine friendship, shared festivals, marriages that crossed the divide. The alliance that had started with one desperate gamble became something real and lasting. On their 10th anniversary, Rowan and Rasha stood in the same meadow where they had been married. It had become a tradition to gather here each year, a celebration of the alliance and the progress they had made. "You ever regret it?" Rowan asked. "Choosing this path, it has not been easy." Rasha looked at him with those amber eyes that still made his heart skip. "Never, not once. This is exactly where I am supposed to be, even with all the difficulty, the constant work, especially because of that. We built something real, Rowan. Not just a treaty or an arrangement, but a genuine joining of peoples. Our children will grow up in a world where humans and orcs are not enemies but neighbors. That is worth every hard day." He kissed her, and it still felt like coming home. Their sons were playing nearby, Quinlan showing Owen how to skip stones in the stream that ran through the meadow. Both boys were accepted in both communities now, evidence of how far they had come. "I love you," Rowan said. "More now than the day we married. I did not think that was possible." "I love you too, and I am grateful every day that I walked into your forge and asked you to teach me how humans love." "I think we ended up teaching each other," she laughed. "That is definitely true." They stood together, watching their children play, surrounded by the community they had helped build. It was not the life either of them had imagined when they first met. It was harder, more complicated, more demanding. It was also better than anything they could have dreamed. Rowan had learned, through all of this, that love and arrangement did not have to be opposites. That duty and desire could align when people were brave enough to fight for it. That building something real required constant work, but the work itself could be a kind of joy. And he had learned that sometimes the best things in life came from taking a risk, from saying yes to the impossible and working to make it real. Years continued to pass, measured in seasons and milestones. Quinlan grew tall and strong, eventually becoming a liaison between human and orc settlements throughout the region. Owen became a scholar, documenting the history and cultures of both peoples, creating records that would help future generations understand how the alliance had formed. Rowan and Rasha grew older together, their hair going gray, their steps slowing. But their love remained constant, deepening with each passing year. They had built a life of meaning and purpose, proving that bridges between peoples could be real and lasting when they were rooted in genuine connection. On quiet evenings, they would still go to the forge, now tended by one of Rowan's apprentices. They would sit together on the workbench where so much had begun, remembering the night Rasha had first asked him to teach her human customs. How terrified and hopeful they had both been, how impossible it had all seemed. "We did well," Rasha said one such evening, her hand warm in his. "We did," Rowan agreed. "Better than I ever dared hope." And in the forge that had witnessed the beginning of their story, surrounded by the tools of his trade and the warmth of banked coals, Rowan Whitmore held his wife close and felt the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. They had taken a chance on love when the world said it was impossible, and they had won, not because it was easy but because they had been willing to fight for it, together.